Welcome to Derry is coming out in October. To prepare for this, I'm reading the book written by Stephen King and will follow it up by watching the 2017 and 2019 film. I got a little carried away covering part 2, the June of 1958, but that's just how much I am truly enjoying this story. It's terrifying within its supernatural horror elements, along with how wicked the people in this story are. Part 3, Grown Ups, has proven to be just the same, but I'll do my best to contain myself. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts of the series, It Begins and Welcome It to Derry, it would help me out if you check those out first. The story is split up into 5 parts, which means we are now officially over halfway done with this story. This part has gone by the quickest for me, and I think that's due to its shorter length than part 2, but our characters are obviously much more fleshed out and established than part 1. King's writing is great, but getting through the hundreds of pages of introduction can get tiring, but thankfully we are in the depths of the darkness now. King's sections seem to mirror each other in most forms, with similar occurrences happening to each of our characters, which seems to be more tied together than just being repetitive. This story has elements of fate and everything is tied together. All of our characters are so similar even 27 years after they first came together, except for Mike, but we'll dive into that soon. We are no longer in 1958. As the title of this part suggests, our cast of characters are all grown up. Kind of. Everyone except for Stanley Uris, of course, has made their way to Derry. We're taken through the eyes of Bill Denbrough and shown how much Derry has changed and every bit stayed the same. New buildings, mostly banks, tower where old ones used to lay. Street names have changed and shopping centers have been erected on top of them. The evil that resides in Derry has not left though, being both Pennywise and some of the humans who live there, as we are shown with the case of the teenage boys and Adrian Mellon in part 1. Our characters meet up at a restaurant in a private room, and just like Derry, we are shown how much these characters have changed, yet fit back into their places as well. Everyone except for Mike Hanlon has gone on to achieve great success. Beverly is a top designer, Richie has gone on to achieve great success with his many voices. Eddie owns his own taxi service, Ben has built impressive structures, and Bill Denbrough has written successful novels along with screenplays. All this time they were achieving this, forgetting about Derry, our friend Mike Hanlon stayed put in the Derry Public Library. Mike didn't blame them for this, it was no fault of theirs. They couldn't control their families moving at various ages, just the same as Mike couldn't control his family staying in Derry. While he stuck around, he remembered at least most of his childhood in Derry. Everyone greets each other and talks like old friends would who have gone 27 years without even remembering each other. After some good chucks, as Richie would put it, Mike lets the Losers Club in on what has been going on in Derry. The missing children, 9 so far, and the case of Adrian Mellon along with some other strange occurrences. Mike isn't the only one who invited everyone back to Derry. Pennywise has been trying to get the gang back to Derry, back home. Even in some cases, written from the blood of victims on walls, "Come home, come home, come home" is scribbled on the walls. In another scene, Bill Denbrough's younger brother Georgie has his photo left, the same photo that was in the book when Bill threw it in 1958. Mike also lets us in on another strange similarity the Losers Club shares. While not for a lack of trying from most of them, none of them bear children. We're even let on a strange tale from Richie. While he got a vasectomy, it wasn't successful. So for a lack of better terms, he wasn't being safe and still no children. Eddie, Bev, Bill, and even back in part 1, we are told Stanley as well, have tried and nothing. But upon further testing, nothing seems to be wrong with any of them medically. After a recap of Derry and sharing some of these strange similarities, Mike passes the leadership back to Bill, just as they were when they were kids. Everyone takes a vote on what has to happen. 2 decisions. They stay or turn around and leave. Unanimously, everyone stayed. Honestly, they had no choice. They really haven't had a choice since whatever happened in the sewers of August of 1958. To celebrate this, they each take a fortune cookie, one by one grabbing it and waiting for the person to their side to grab theirs. They somehow knew something was going to happen and at the same time didn't know. As each opened their cookie, they were met with horrors of recent times. For Beverly, it would be blood gushing out of the cookie because all she could think about was the deep cut that was left in her foot after the altercation with Tom Rogan. For others, it was an eye, teeth, bugs, whatever was keeping them up at night or terrified them recently. Pennywise, just like Derry, just like the Losers Club, has changed, but always stayed the same. Mike's idea is to split up, explore Derry, and let it take you where you need to be. Some of our losers have an idea of where they will go. Others plan to let their feet take them on a blind journey. Richie's case is interesting. Even as children, all of our members had interactions with Pennywise before meeting up, all except for Richard Tozier. At least That's what we're told by him. He convinced himself back then, and all these years later, that whatever happened was just a dream. He was chased by our terrible three of Victor Criss, Belch Huggins, and Henry Bowers after Richie Trashmouth Tozier made one of his infamous comments. He was chased through stores and all over downtown before eventually outsmarting the three cavemen. To celebrate this, he takes a rest at a bench near the famous Paul Bunyan statue. He figures he must have dozed off because with a swish of warm air across his face, the famous statue that stood upright was now bent over, staring at him, leaning on that giant axe. Now it was a red-nosed version of Mr. Bunyan, who was missing his blue ox babe, declared he would eat Richie right the fuck up before pulling the axe out of the sidewalk and up into the air. What goes up must come down. With a swift motion, the lumberjack split the bench in half, right where Richie was sitting before he fell out of it onto the gravel. Again, the axe rises. Again, it falls, splitting the sidewalk where, again, Richie was just laying. With a few more strikes, Richie ends up turning around and escaping the shadow of the giant. But when he turns around, the bench is one hole. The sidewalk has no split, and Paul Bunyan is standing tall, smiling into the sky. That all happened back in 1958. Now in 1985, he finds himself alone at the same bench, still one hole, and all those memories rushing back to him. It's unsettling, the memories of that dream. As he goes to leave, he glances the marquee in front of City Center, which instead of reading about the rock concerts coming in, now read about Richie Tozier and the All Dead Rock Tour. This included long-deceased rock stars with the likes of Buddy Holly, John Lennon, and others. The sign ended with a greeting to Richie. "Welcome home, Richie. You're dead too." We are then taken through an eerily similar incident that happened to him on the same bench 27 years earlier, except instead of Paul Bunyan leaning on his axe, it was a clown holding a bundle of red balloons. Throughout this story, King does a great job of making connections in his writing, blending this current interaction with the previous. Now, instead of threatening to eat Richie up, he is inviting him and his friends down into the sewer, where they have the eye. The eye refers to a movie that disturbed Richie deeply as a child. A similar pursuit unfolds, except when Richie looks back this time, it's Buddy Holly standing tall. His glasses seem to be mended together with adhesive tape, similar to Richie's as a child. As he left, his eyes had a twinge of pain, which he consistently blamed on his contacts. Upon popping them out, they fell onto the sidewalk. Him and a woman searched for them, not finding a single one. The lady who helped him, along with a man holding a baby, seemed to have noticed nothing except for a man having a manic episode. But the baby the man was holding was weeping hysterically the whole time. During these walking tours of Derry, our other friends have their own interactions with Pennywise. Ben Hanscom comes at the Derry Public Library as he is trying to make a library card just to have as a souvenir. Personally, this interaction was my favorite. It comes so out of left field and is actually the first interaction in this chapter, and those are the reasons I think it hits so strongly for me. As Ben is trying to get his card, he hears a voice bark from behind him, yet no one issues a shh or quiet down. The voice barks and barks until Ben turns around. It's Pennywise screaming that Ben Hanscom is responsible for the dead and missing children of Derry. From up above on the stairs, it continues to get under Ben's skin. And in my favorite part of this section, it starts joking with the adults around it. Except Pennywise and Ben are the only ones who hear these, and Pennywise is the only one laughing. Ben went to escape this torment by thumbing through the shelves, but there was no escape. Eventually, Pennywise even morphed into a Dracula-type beast with razor blades for teeth. Blood spills from its mouth onto an old lady's hand, but she just goes about reading her magazine. Being frightened by this, Ben grabbed a book and let out a little shout, which was indeed followed by the shh and quiet downs one would expect. He even muttered some words about turning his silver coins into slugs, not bullets. The librarian went over and checked on Ben. She figured the book Ben had grabbed was the one he wanted to check out. She was still trying to check on Ben, and Ben just kept blaming it on his lunch. But as he turned around to see if Razormouth Dracula was still there, the only thing standing atop the stairs was a bulging red balloon. Written on it was the words, "Have a good day. Tonight, you die." As quickly as Ben could, he hurried out of the library. When he finally looked at what book he accidentally checked out, it was the same one he dropped when Henry carved his first initial into his stomach. Even the last line of the card still read, Benjamin Hanscom, July 9th, 1958. The only rules Mike laid out during their lunch was everyone had to go on their own and stay away from the Barons. Eddie came dangerously close to breaking that second rule. He wandered to an old lot where older boys would play baseball and he would watch. These older boys included the likes of Belch Huggins, even hitting a few balls over the fence into the barrens. This lot was in the back of a trucking company. The business was now closed and the asphalt lot was barren. Even the lines that were dug in by feet that served as baselines had smoothed out. That was until Eddie approached the fence, peering into the barrens. He was met with an undead version of Belch Huggins wearing a Yankees jersey. Eddie preferred to stay away, even though Belch offered him to come down and play. Belch approached, and as he scaled the fence, Eddie saw bits of skin come off between the links and could hear a squirting sound coming from his fingers. A few other friends of the past torment Eddie as well, but his part was more of fleshing out his past along with giving us a few hints of what's to come. The name Patrick Hochstetter has come up in other works like The Troop, but the name in this story has been brought up a few times throughout the story. It hasn't had any significant meaning yet, but the only thing we really know is that he rolled with Henry Bowers and met his end with the other terrible three. Beverly ended up wandering to her old apartment house, where she finds out her father most likely still lives there. Marsh is still on the third mailbox. She tells herself she needs to turn around, but she finds herself ringing the doorbell. With no answer, she again told herself she needed to turn around as she rings for a second time, and a third, until there was a familiar shuffle of slippers. Yet what answered the door wasn't her father. It was Mrs. Kirsch, a lady who claimed that she moved in shortly after her father moved out, who invites her in as she doesn't get much company. When Beverly takes a second look at the mailbox, she must have just misinterpreted it because it did indeed say Kirsch. Mrs. Kirsch insists Beverly has a look around, and like the greater areas of Derry, much has changed. What differs this interaction from the others is Bev's story is a much more slow burn. Mrs. Kirsch serves Beverly some tea that seemed mucky, but tasted just fine. As she has a conversation, Mrs. Kirsch starts to evolve into a wretched old witch from Hansel and Gretel, the one who ate up all the kids. Her fingers turned to claws, the tea was sewer water, and the furniture turned to fudge. Beverly goes to make a rush to the door, but as she turns around, she sees her father, lumbering in the hallway. He explained why he beat her, and it's extremely uncomfortable. Pennywise is a great character in terms of what he is able to do, and he takes the fears and uncertainties of these characters and turns it against them, this time preying on Beverly's unfortunate upbringing. As she falls out of the door and runs to the road, narrowly avoiding a truck, she turns around to see the old apartment house. Those bright windows 10 minutes ago are now boarded up. Her clothes were covered with dust, and as she was trying to get farther away, she thought to herself there is no way to beat it. She just needed to leave. As this thought crossed her mind, a yellow balloon with electric blue text brushed against her calf. On it, floating away in the breeze, was a message from Pennywise. That's White Wabbit. While Mike went to the library for work shortly after Ben's incident, Bill wandered around where Georgie had passed away. When coming across a sewer drain, he yells into it. He doesn't come across Pennywise and receives no answer. Instead, he has a brief conversation with a small boy on a skateboard who wandered up. Through this, we see some of the terrors that children are experiencing in Derry still, like Jaws being in the canal. Bill, at one point, decides he wanted to give that little skateboard a try. The small boy obliged, and Bill put one foot on and rolled it back and forth for a second. Upon second thought, Bill realized he didn't have the youth he did 27 years ago. A thought even crossed his mind. He used to ride Silver like he was going to beat the devil. He bet the kid rode his skateboard the same way. He warned the kid to stay away from drains and to travel in a group, and parted ways. As he made his way down the hill, he asked a young girl about her favorite store. He didn't even mean to. He didn't think to do it. The words just flew out of his mouth. This sent him on a journey to Secondhand Rose Secondhand Clothes Store. This store was said to have antiques, used clothes, and all sorts of stuff laid messily on tables. When Bill arrived, through the show window, he saw a ghost. His bike, yes, really his bike from his childhood, Silver, was sitting in the window. Silver was in much more rough condition than before, with flat tires, scrapes, and roughed up handlebars, but it was still him. Bill goes into the shop, and in front of the man who ran the store was a large barber pole for sale as well. That's not what Bill went into the store for, obviously, but the first words out of his mouth were, "The post." We see this phrase, he thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghosts. It plays over and over in Bill's head, in his own voice, disabling Bill. On the outside, he's freaking out, which in turn freaks out the man behind the desk. Eventually, he's able to suppress the thought using a trick he learned as a teenager. He translated the phrase into French and got enough out of his mouth to complete the transaction for Silver, not the barber pole. He wheeled the bike back to Mike's house, and still he couldn't figure out the phrase. When he arrived at Mike's, he fixed up Silver. He patched up the hole in the tire along with some other maintenance. What was still missing was the cards that were pinned to the spokes and would flutter as he rode. All the maintenance items Mike had recently bought were for no real reason other he had a sudden urge that he thought he might need them soon. Just like those, he produced a brand new deck of blue-backed bicycle playing cards. Bill took them and went to shuffle the deck. His hands were so shaky that they sprayed all over the ground. When he bent down to pick them up, they both noticed that the only two cards to land face up were the ace of spades. I don't know how your guys' playing cards are, but from what I know, they don't come in duplicates. When they pick them up, one of the aces has a red back. This weirded out the men, but still, Bill clipped both of them to the spokes of his bike. And still, Bill could not figure out the phrase. He thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghosts. Over some dinner, Bill brings it up to Mike, and sure enough, Mikey knows where the phrase is from. It's an old exercise that children with lisps and stutter would practice. Bill's mother tried so hard to get him to do it, and Bill pushed himself even harder. He never got it, except for once. He said it at least once, but he doesn't remember when. That ends our story of the Losers Club for now, but we still have some uninvited guests to attend to. Some of the people of Derry are very wretched and evil humans, but wretched humans aren't just confined to Derry. We've seen this with the likes of Tom Rogan, and we haven't seen the last of him. He pays a visit to Beverly's best friend in adulthood and beats the location of Beverly out of her. Her friend leaves a call warning Bev about what is coming, but Beverly was not at the townhouse. One invited guest makes his way to Derry. Audra Denbrough, Bill Denbrough's wife, is worried sick about Bill. The scar on his hand that appeared after the phone call freaked her out. Same with the look in his eyes. What really bugged her was him forgetting everything about his childhood and deceased younger brother. What actually terrified her was that awful stutter that seemed to jump out of nowhere. She decided to abandon her current shooting of the Attic Room movie. A second uninvited guest makes her way to Derry. Just like our members of the Losers Club have mirrored lives, weirdly enough, so do the current actions of our guests. Audra and Tom find themselves rooms in hotels in Derry. Those buildings are only separated by a sidewalk. They also park nose to nose, with that sidewalk being the only thing separating their vehicles. We still have one more guest on the way to Derry. Henry Bowers resides in Juniper Hill, a mental asylum in Augusta, Maine for mildly dangerous patients. There are plenty of reasons Henry could have ended up at Juniper Hill at some point, but the real reason isn't even true. He killed his father, Victor Chris, Belch Huggins, Patrick Hochstetter, and all the other victims during the summer of 1958. The only person who he may have actually taken the life of was his father, but that's still not clear. What is clear is the others were not directly his victims. Victor, Belch, and Patrick were all led into the sewer by Henry because they were chasing the Losers Club. The Derry townsfolk needed someone to blame, and Henry would be that someone. He had the books of Victor and Belch in his closet. He had Patrick's belt in his room and Veronica Grogan's clothes under his mattress. While the boys' items were easily explainable and he knew how he obtained those, Veronica's were not his doing. He did know what put them there. It was it from the sewers that placed those in his room. But sure, someone needed to take the blame. Sure, he did it all. He was spared, so why not? 27 years after he claimed those victims, the moon spoke to him. It was the voice of Victor Chris telling Henry that they were coming back to Derry. Belch took his turn. Coming from the moon, he said, "You're the only one, Henry. You have to get him for me and Vic." He was then struck in the back of the neck with a roll of quarters inside a fist. The wardens of the asylum ruled with iron fists. Henry paused his hoeing duties to listen to these voices, which is what led to that bash. After some time, the voices piped back up. This time, it was the clown. Pennywise, again speaking from the moon, only to Henry, said he had to go back to Derry and kill them all. Again, another fist of quarters to the neck, this time strong enough to knock Henry out. We would feel some sympathy for the man, even though he was a scumbag. Except when Henry's nightlight went out, Victor crawled from under the bed, promising Henry he would help him out to avenge him. Vic promised he could take care of them if he only half believed. But Henry was different. Henry could take care of the Losers Club if they half believed, fully believed, or didn't believe at all. So Pennywise keeps his promise, dealing with Kuntz, the worst guard of the bunch. Pennywise, similar to Derry, never really changes at its core. As it escorts Henry out, one of the other members of the asylum sees them leaving. It's not Victor Chris as you might have guessed. Rather, it's his mother he had killed as a child. When Kuntz comes to check the noise, he's met with Henry and his escort. Not Jimmy's mother, not the clown, but a Doberman head in a clown suit. One final uninvited guest makes his way to Derry, sleeping during the day and hitching rides at night. Just like all the other sections, This one is wrapped up with another Derry interlude, which is just another great part of this story. These tend to give us a better understanding of what's going on in the form of Mike Hanlon's notes. This interlude has been my favorite and gives us the most information of them all so far. We are told that a big sacrifice, a large number of deaths, is required to end this terror of roughly 18 months that circles back every 27-ish years. These have happened in the forms of the Ironworks explosion, the fire at the Black Spot, and whatever terrors ended the previous loops. Similar to the way the cycle ends, a similar event is needed to set the cycle into motion. We are told the story of the Bradley Gang execution, which started the cycle which was capped off with the fire at the Black Spot. The Bradley Gang were 8 people who robbed banks in the Midwest, even taking a banker for ransom. After receiving the ransom, they murdered the banker anyways. They are one of the FBI's most wanted at this point, so they try to lay low. They got too hot in Indiana and moved their way northeast, stopping by Derry to get some ammunition. And when I say some ammunition, I mean over 5,000 of various types. The man, Lau Mackin, who runs the store they stopped at, promised to fulfill their order in 2 days' time. During the days between, he told everyone who stopped by, and all of those people who stopped by decided to stock up on ammunition to go hunting some small vermin. As the gang rolled back in, they were met with over 50 Derry folk armed to the teeth. Some were sitting on benches, others were sitting on steps. Nonetheless, the 2 cars which held the 8 members were unloaded on. Even when some of the women in the gang tried to surrender, whether people meant to or not, they were met with bullets. All were deceased, which started that cycle. And this story never really made the news. And this is because, as Mr. Keene said, the news will only be big because of the place. Like how an earthquake that takes 8 in LA will be bigger than one that takes hundreds in a third world country. The lore that we were given was interesting, but the clown some saw is what was more intriguing. People assumed he was some important figure, a lawyer, doctor, council member, or even one of the clowns from the circus some miles up north. But most doubted that. Everyone just assumed it was someone who wanted to conceal their identity. The clown's identity was never revealed, but the details of this clown were interesting. Everyone who saw the clown saw him in different places. Some saw him near a bench, others by the canal. One man even saw him hanging, all the way to his knees out of a window. No one could get his weapon down either. Mr. Keene thought he had a Winchester bolt action. That must have been because that's what he had. Biff Marlowe thought he had a Remington, because that's what he had. Even a man named Jimmy, not the one in the asylum, thought he had an old Springfield. Must have been because that's what he had. The most disturbing detail about the clown, though, came from Biff, the man who saw the clown hanging from the window. He wasn't really hanging, though. He was floating out of the window. And this execution took place at 2:25 p.m. with the sun near its peak. Even with this, as the clown floated out the window, it cast no shadow below. That wraps up part 3 grown-ups. We're getting deeper into whatever it is, along with being introduced to what will really stop it. As we know, Pennywise isn't the only horror we have to deal with now. I'm excited to finish this, so make sure you follow my other socials or join my Discord to know when I post part 4 that will dive into the July of 1958. All my links are in the description. If you've already seen the first 2 parts of the series, check out my deep dive of the troupe.